We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox disinfecting all-purpose cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
With new McValue at McDonald's, you always get more than you expect every day. So even if gas prices go up, you can buy a double cheeseburger and add a McChicken for $1. Or before game time, you can get $5 meal deals for the group. And if breakfast is about to end, get deals in the app to save before the bell. The choice is yours, and the choice with McValue is always more.
Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value. Must opt into rewards for app deals.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. Here's where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so you can grab those and go out with your friends. Abercrombie's denim fits come in a range of washes. Build your looks around Abercrombie denim. Shop online or in-store.
Hello and welcome to the Ground Jewels. My name is James Dixon and I'm delighted that you've joined us again this week as we have the absolutely brilliant Daniel Storey, the chief football writer for The Eye, joining us to talk about not only his favourite ground but his fantastic project where he's trying to visit all 92 Football League grounds in a single season, which is just right up our street as a podcast. I think we can all agree. I know a lot of people enjoyed Mike Bubbins last week. Why wouldn't you enjoy Mike Bubbins? I know a lot of people enjoyed him because you've graciously told me. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the feedback as usual. I think it was a great episode on Lambeau Field. The week before when we spoke to Orla Shenaway about Croke Park, I think that was a great episode too. And I think well, I don't know because I'm recording this on Thursday, but I think the NFL is about to announce a Pittsburgh Steelers Green Bay Packers game to be played at Croke Park. So, that's nice and serendipitous there. Definitely be trying to go to next year because, that just sounds like a lot of fun. NFL in Dublin, nice weekend in September, October. Yeah. That'll be nice. That will be nice. Let's do a little bit of stadium news before we hear from Daniel. One story that caught my eye this week was Luke Littler. Warrington Wolves have renamed the Halliwell Jones Stadium the Luke Littler Stadium for one night only to honour the darts prodigy. I think it's fun. I think it's nice. I'm not going to feel too bad for Halliwell Jones, I didn't even know what they did until, you might think that's a former player. It's not, it's just a car dealership, don't feel bad for them. It's not like they renamed Wilderspool. So all for this sort of thing, bring nice bit of PR for the club, etc., etc. So that's fine. One thing I've been watching with interest is the 100 franchise auction. Even though it's not specifically about stadiums, it's about the franchises in the 100, Northern Superchargers, Trent Rockets, Southern Brave, etc. I think it tells us so much about stadiums and locations. So Welsh Fire have been valued at 80 million. Birmingham, whatever they're called, Birmingham Phoenix are valued at 80 million. Northern Superchargers 100 million. Manchester 115 million. Now they may be slightly inflated because Yorkshire's sold all of their rights because of the financial problems that they're in, whereas most teams are only selling 50% of their 49% share that they can sell. Manchester have agreed to sell part of their share, combining it with the 49. So those may be slightly inflated prices because people are getting not just equity, but they're getting more control. So let's park that. But what's really interesting is in London, the Oval Invincibles. The deal there values them at the Oval, the oldest and most historic Test match grounds in the country. It values the Oval Invincibles at 120 million, and they've been a successful side historically in the 100, if you can say historically in the 100, and it's not an oxymoron. But the deal for 49% of the London Spirit It's 145 million, valuing the team at over 290 million. And that can only be a Lord's factor. It's just Lord's, isn't it? Same city. And what can explain 170 million different valuation? That is almost telling you how important heritage and prestige and tradition is. You can put a number on it. So it's incredibly interesting what's happening there. All these people buying in, and I think the numbers are mind-boggling, actually, in terms of, the value of the 100 tournament, given where it's at in terms of broadcast and everything like that. And, it's definitely selling the family silver. And I suppose this goes back to one of our really early podcasts with the journalist Annie Chave when we talked about Taunton. She has so many interesting views on this. And we talked about this 2 years ago in terms of, this is a competition being set up to be sold. And what will that mean for county cricket, etc., etc. So, yeah, something to keep an eye on. Finally, and you'll know why I did this, because Daniel is a Nottingham Forest fan, but there is news from the City Ground, and they are hosting an England international this summer. They're going to be hosting England versus Senegal, a friendly, which means the redevelopment of the Peter Taylor stand is going to be put off for another year. So Forest obviously doing incredibly well at the moment, potentially going to be European football, maybe even Champions League football next year, and their fans have been demanding, a section of fans have been demanding the Peter Taylor stand be redeveloped for a while now. It's a small stand. It's the one that you can't see on TV. It's the runt of the litter. It's opposite the big Brian Clough stand, runs all the way along the side of the pitch. It's where the dugouts are. Famously, where Ron Atkinson went into the wrong dugout one time. Also famously, where Brian Clough would walk onto the pitch and clip someone round the ear and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the Peter Taylor stand. But it's been given a reprieve, a stay of execution, and now the plan is to replace it, not this summer, but next summer, upgrade the capacity to 40,000, and, jobs are good and with Nottingham Forest and the City Ground. So, yeah, that's what's happening there. But there'll be more on the City Ground in our chat with Daniel, which is ostensibly about Grimsby Town's Blundell Park.
So today on the Ground Jewels, we're joined by Daniel Storey. Daniel is the chief football writer for The Eye, and he has written some fantastic books on icons of the game, including George Best, Paul Gascoigne, and Eric Cantona. Daniel, welcome to the Ground Jewels.
Thank you for having me.
What's your football origin story, really? So how did you end up where you are now?
So I started I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. I started going to games when I was 5. I think we got a season ticket the August 1991 with my mum. So immediately after Forest lost the FA Cup final. And from then on, bar a rise in 94, 95 under Frank Clark, I've basically seen bad times for Forest until the last couple of years. When I was, I kind of fell into the industry I'm in terms of football writing, which sounds as fortunate as it was. In 2009, after university, I went travelling by myself and to watch football, so through Africa and Eastern Europe, and kind of just decided that this would be an amazing thing to do, and yet didn't make anything of it at the time, and just started doing little freelance bits and bobs and, working for free, and probably was just at the end of that time when that was a viable route into things actually happening rather than banging your head against a brick wall. And thankfully, through that stuff kind of snowballed.
That's fascinating. So where did you go? And I mean, we've talked a little bit about Europe and Eastern Europe on the podcast, and one of my books covers the whole of Europe and the early Champions League. So delve there, but we've definitely not covered any African football so far. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, the broad strokes of it were I flew to South Africa, and so this was 2009, so the year before they hosted the World Cup. Just as a kind of, I slightly talked my way into not a BBC pass, but just I'm going to go and look and see how the stadiums are getting on. Not for any money, not for any reason other than it was a good idea and it was a good excuse to visit the stadiums being constructed and seeing where they were at. Watch some cricket as well while I was there, and watch some domestic football. Santos, Cape Town predominantly, but also some Orlando Pirates. And then from there, I flew to Egypt, and because I wanted to watch, kind of Zamalek derby, that sort of stuff.
Wow.
And from there, I then went flew to Greece and basically did 14 countries in southern and eastern Europe, trying to go to capital cities and trying to see as many football games as I could, but mainly derbies as I could. So I did the Belgrade derby, Sofia derby, AEK Athens, Zeljesnica in Sarajevo, and ended up and flew home from. So went to Warsaw and then flew home from Krakow in Poland. So it was a magical mystery tour.
It's quite the odyssey, isn't it? That's amazing. I mean, some of those games are absolute bucket list items for people, particularly, Belgrade and Egypt. Transport yourself back to one now. This isn't Desert Island Discs, obviously, but where sort of stands in your memory most vividly from that time?
Yeah, I think you picked it out, that Belgrade derby. So it was 2009 was quite a famous derby in that it was at the Red Star Stadium, and Partizan fans burned their seats in the away end. So there was this kind of pyre of ripped out seats, and everybody had to. There was one big pyre in the middle, which was, I mean, as ludicrous as it sounds, sort of manageable, and everyone knew to stay away from that. And then there were all these little ones that were actually more dangerous because people were just sort of falling into them. I'm amazed no one was seriously injured, but in the end, the away fans just had to leave the stand towards the end because it was on fire. Which I remember for like sort of 4 or 5 years afterwards, watching English football, and I know people throwing bottles at caps and cigarette lights at players is unacceptable and it shouldn't happen, but you kind of mind flicked back to seats being on fire at the back of an away game, and the football just carrying on while it was happening. They had fire engines driven around the back of the goal to try to squirt water into the stands, but other than that, the game just carried on.
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't the game carry on? I sort of that what you were just saying there reminded me of a memory when I was actually at the City Ground, which it's not the Trent, it's the end that's the opposite of the Trent end, and I was
the Radcliffe Road end,
Road, and I was with some Colchester fans when Colchester were having their one good season in the Championship, and it's the only time I've ever had coins thrown at me. So thank you from Forest fans who were sat above. So thank you for that. I'm not assuming that you were there. You were probably off in Eastern Europe, so it's fine.
I think I was a Trent End man I was a Brian Clough stand with my mum and then Trent End stand with my friends, so I'm pleading not guilty.
Fair enough. What you're doing now this season, I guess, is sort of recreating that odyssey in a more manageable form, but you're doing something really impressive and something that a lot of people might want to do one day over the course of their lifetime, and that's go to all the 92 league grounds. And you're trying to do it in a season which seems ambitious, Daniel. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is ambitious. I think it kind of had to be ambitious. I think because I'm doing this on company time and it's a work project, and we want to make it. We didn't just want it to be 92 disparate matches and pieces. We wanted it to be a project as a whole, so I think it had to be ambitious. And I think once you're going to do a project that tries to take in most of the EFL or most of the 92, then you have to do one that takes in all of it. It's taken a huge amount of planning, and that planning is far more fluid than I would like, in terms of postponements and games being moved and making sure you tick off places where you're not sure when you're going to get back there. But that's absolutely right up my street. I can pretend that this is a job, but really I'm pinching myself for 9 months. It's everything I'd want to do. I first pitched it 3 or 4 years ago to the Eye, and it was sort of seen then as a bit too much of a... I pitched it during the season where the Qatar World Cup was in the middle of it. So, it was a stupid time to do it. In hindsight, it was a good time because it meant that when I pitched it, when there wasn't a daft World Cup in the middle of the season, then it seemed more manageable. And I think also practically the change of Champions League rules and people not really sure how the Champions League was going to work in that first season, the format meant there was a reason to transpose myself onto every club in the 92.
Planning must be, obviously you say fluid and difficult, but it must be problematic. There must be maybe you've got Carlisle or whoever penciled in and that game then moves or is called off, and it's just like, when am I going to get back there? And you've got, every everything you do affects everything else as well. Is there what's been the most logistically challenging thing so far?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, I drove to halfway to Sunderland before getting caught in the snow and having to come back. So then Sunderland has to be rearranged. I'm fortunate for two things. Firstly, not every fan will like it, but the new EFL TV deal and the rise in games on Sky has massively helped me because it's brought in things like Thursday night football. It's brought in different kickoff times on Saturdays, so that theoretically, if the games are close, I could probably do a 12:30 and a 5:30. You know, an EFL game and a Premier League game, which I've not had to do yet. But yes, it not working out and me being stranded on 90 or 91 is living not even in the back of my mind. It's kind of ruling my thoughts. We did build up some lag time before Christmas by blitzing it as we record in, latest January. I'm going to be going to my 60th game this coming Saturday. So 30 odd left. I think we'll do it, but I don't want to say I'll do it in case I don't. And if I don't do it, the whole project is a farce and I look like an idiot. So yes, it will, I think, get done. The big complicating factor is that the EFL finishes a month before everyone else because of the playoffs, and you don't know who's going to be in the playoffs, which means you can't really rely on going to a single playoff game. Yes, it would be easier if on the 1st of August you knew every TV game for the rest of the season, but that's not how these things work. So you have to be fluid, and there is a spreadsheet that has been edited 100 times already, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about playoffs. Would a playoff game count for you so if you have to, it's going to count? Don't put too many barriers in the way, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only barrier I put in is I've been to a couple of EFL trophy games before, and I mean, they would count because they're competitive, but I just, I ruled them out or said they would be a kind of backup. But no, I've done FA Cup, I've done League Cup, I've done League, I would do playoffs. I think the kind of idea for the project is my final game is going to be at the City Ground to see Forest, who I've only seen once during their miraculous season to date, and they lost 3-0 away at Man City. So I'm not going again until the final day. And then the following day after that is the Championship playoff final at Wembley, which feels quite a nice way to tie the whole thing off. Kind of ground number 93 of 92, the National Stadium, for the big domestic game of the season. So yeah, that's the dream. But until I'm walking down Wembley Way, having seen that 93rd game, I won't quite believe I'm going to manage it yet.
That's fair enough. Well, best of luck. Can I ask you a few questions about the sort of 60 or so grounds that you've done so far then? Where has surprised you the most?
I'd never been to the grounds I was always going to be most excited about. I think naturally were the ones that I hadn't been to before, unless they were ones that I really loved and had. And I think typically those are quite rare, not because I don't love football grounds, but because I particularly love going to new grounds. Bromley sticks out from early season. I went to their first ever Football League home game after 130 years as a club, and I knew it. I'd been in the week before to interview people and kind of get a sense of what was going on, and I knew it was going to be joyous. But just that genuinely felt like witnessing on a very small local scale, witnessing history in action, seeing like the power of a football club who had existed for so long, and then them getting this unthinkable breakout where they reached the Football League and winning on that day. And it was really sunny, it was warm, the ground was packed, people were having to kind of queue to get in and stand around the side of the pitch. And it ticked off all those boxes that you thought you would get on the first day of a season. So yeah, Bromley really sticks out. In terms of those other new ones, I love Fratton Park. I went there this week. It was a record. Again, I knew I would love it because I know what it's about. And there are certain positive stereotypes of, in inverted commas, that sort of ground. The capacity between 20 and 35, the age of the stadium, the design of the stadium, how close it feels, how close it is to housing around it, all of that stuff. Like, that a club's going to have to work really hard to get it wrong if you've got those sort of ingredients. So yeah, there's a few of those, and there are those that don't land with you, and those out of town. It's not the fault of the clubs, but those kind of smallish out of town stadiums that don't really feel like they've got a unique identity. I think clubs have to work harder. I think their life is harder in terms of winning home games and attracting fans because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you had anywhere in mind, and I won't make you lambast clubs. When you were saying that, small out of town grounds that are near nowhere, I was like, that's Colchester. He means Colchester.
I was about to say, yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's not, I really like Danny Cowley, and I went to interview him, and he's a great guy, and he wants this kind of togetherness. And you do get a sense that it's harder because it's on the edge of town. It's kind of one tier all the way around. The corners aren't filled in. I mean, I was there for an EFL Cup game against Brentford. So although it was Premier League opposition, it wasn't quite the sort of... People weren't expecting to win, so there wasn't that sort of angst in the ground, which creates atmosphere anyway. It was a light August night, so it was still light while the game was on. And, you just got a sense of like, no team's coming here scared.
Yeah. It's a shame as well, because, I mean, know why they had to leave Layer Road, but their fans loved Layer Road. It's everything you were sort of describing of maybe not in terms of size, in terms of Portsmouth, but it's that close. It's that old stadium. It's that city centre, town centre. Colchester City is probably a city, but it's all those good. And then they move, and then it's just like it hasn't quite worked out for them since then. So yeah, but if you get the good times, and we were talking to Jim Waterson, formerly of The Guardian, what's happened, very similar thing happened with York, and they're doing really well. So that new generation is enjoying being in that new stadium. So I think success can change your perception of a place, can't it?
Yeah, it can, and there is an expectation. We're going to talk about Blundell Park and Grimsby, and there is an expectation of younger fans that there are things like the drinks they want, and there's some degree of comfort. And they've not grown up at a time when they're like, this is football heritage and we need this. Yeah. And so if they're going to keep going, they do need a degree of not comfort, but just a degree that it doesn't feel like the worst place they've been to in their week. And there are elements of those older grounds, as much as I love them, that do feel like that. And York is a really perfect example in that if you then get quite a big environs, a big population invested in it, they're more likely to go, A, when the football's going well, and B, when they can have quite a nice time as well.
Yeah, they really are, and they're doing well. So that'll be good to see. So you mentioned it just then, so we might as well not put it off any further. You are a Nottingham Forest fan, doing the 92, and I'm obviously following what you're doing, and you said recently that this Blundell Park is your favourite ground. So I was like, I reached out to you. I said, would you like to come and talk about it? And you kindly said yes. So why Blundell Park? Why the home of Grimsby Town, which obviously is not even in Grimsby?
No, I think that the first answer, and it's a kind of non-answer, is that I think it was already in the top 10 or 15 and I'd never been there before, which sounds entirely counterlogical, but I knew that there were those ingredients, and not just those ingredients, but then some unique ingredients. So it's everything we've just talked about with Fratton Park, for example. There's no identikit nature here. Everything looks different. And at Grimsby, that is to the power of 10. So the Findus stand is absolutely massive and towers over all the other stands. You cannot believe that it is part of the same ground as anything else. It also only runs for half the length of the pitch, so that's non-normal. You can sit in it and you can literally see tankers and ferries going past in the sea. That is non-normal. There is a railway bridge a quarter of a mile from the ground which you can climb and get the most perfect view of a football ground you can imagine, and yet it's not been designed that way in any way. So that's non-normal. And all of it, you go in as a fan or as a member of the press, you go through an inexplicably small wooden door that you have to, that as a member of the press, you have to knock on to get into. It feels like going into Narnia. Like, none of this is normal. And yet it's exactly what I want. It's got the oldest part of the main stand is the oldest in the country, so it's got the heritage. It's a wooden stand with wooden beams across it. And all of this, or most of this, I'd been told or knew even before I went.
Yeah.
So you're kind of set up to be like, nothing's going to disappoint me here. I deliberately saved it for between Christmas and New Year, because it's a kind of, in the piece I wrote, I described Grimsby and Cleethorpes as kind of end of the road towns or end of the line towns, and I think they are. And I think the best time to visit those places to get a real sense of it is when nobody else is, or few other people are there, which is between Christmas and New Year was perfect. And it also was a spectacularly sunny, crisp, clear day. So I feel like I'm owed some karma in terms of visiting these grounds because I'm doing all of them in a single season, but I don't deserve any more luck than I got when visiting Grimsby that day.
It sounds magical. We've had the poet Ian Macmillan on, who's a Barnsley fan before, and he, as he, as a poet would do, was able to sort of wax lyrical about the ferries and the tankers, and just sitting at the top of that stand. I think it's one of those. It's delightfully rare, isn't it? And we love unique things, and whether that's in football, whether that's in society, whether that's in nature. And I can't think of anywhere. I think there's loads of great seaside grounds, and you Fratton Park, down there as well. You go up to Scotland, some of the, like Arbroath and Brechin and places like that. There's something a little bit extra special about football by the seaside, and I think it's as an away fan when you're going, I think they're sort of the ones you really like. People love going to Torquay, people love going to Grimsby. People, if you're in non-league, in National League North, going to Southport is fun. That's a lovely end of the road sort of place to go to. And I don't know. Do you think am I just over romanticizing it, or is football by the sea what we want?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for me as a boy and man who grew up in Nottingham, just about as far away from the sea as you can get. Yes, it feels like cheating to have a day at the seaside and a football match on the same day, because they're different things, right? Yeah. One of them's a summer day out with your family, and the other one is in winter. So you're getting to combine the two, which feels like you're somehow cheating. And I also think with the ferry and tankers thing, one of the things I love about particularly lower league grounds is that quite often you get a sense of life happening outside them while you're at the football. One example I can think of is Mansfield, which, because one of the stands on the far side is not in use and is very small, you can see people shopping and people queuing in traffic at traffic lights outside the ground. And I know they don't want to be in the ground, otherwise they would be, probably. But it's a sense of like, I'm at the football and you're not, and I'm winning and you're not, and you're having to do normal things and I'm getting to just watch football. And I think when you see, I'm overanalyzing, but seeing a tanker go past feels like the sort of, I don't know, the final boss version of that, where you're not just watching people going around, you're seeing trawlers, you're seeing ferries carrying goods while you're watching a football match live. That's the ultimate cheat code.
Yeah, I mean, that Mansfield's very local to me, so I know exactly the retail part you mean. I can see people queuing up to go into SCS sofas, although you probably don't queue into there. It is, but it's hard to get a ticket to Mansfield now at the moment. They're having their best time for a while. So for people who don't know, I mean, and you've described it, but what's the setting in terms of Blundell Park? It is that classic sort of right in the centre of a community, isn't it? It's that terraced housing. It's it's not the easiest to park at. It's if you're driving there, it's if you're approaching Blundell Park, what do you see?
Yeah, it's exactly as you say. It's a terraced. It combines the two cheat codes, which is it's a seaside town. You can literally see the sea. There's one road between the ground and the sea, albeit there's a little area of strand as well, and a seaside path, and then you're onto the beach. And it's stark beach. It's not put your parasol up and have some picnic beach. It's a kind of, it looks marshy. It looks kind of Grimsby-like. It looks like earthy and industrial, beautiful for that reason. And then it's also this terrace ground where you can literally, anyone listening now can go on Google Maps and just tick their way through the streets. And it's, I wrote this in the piece, but it's Lovett Street, Tiverton Street, Blundell Avenue. Oh, a football stadium. That's nice. Neville Street, Fuller Street. It is absolutely snug into terraced housing. You can literally live next door to Blundell Park.
Yeah.
And yet, because those two things, I think somewhere like Fratton Park is definitely by the sea in inverted commas. But if I was in Fratton Park, I don't think I would know I was at the seaside. Whereas when at Blundell Park, you're at the seaside. There's some innate sense of I am by the sea here. Whether it's the air, whether it's the seagulls, whether it's the position you're sat in where you can literally see the sea, whether it's the smell of fish and chips, it's everything. And it also is this, because it's this end of the line town, the atmosphere within the ground is very much, we are all of Grimsby. We are all incredibly proud, this kind of dogged pride in our town and our football club and our area and our own, our own players, our own manager, our own owner. And it creates something entirely organic that is absolutely sensational for a neutral observer or a casual observer. Right down to like the sounds, there's the sound doesn't hold in the stadiums. You hear like individual shouts on the wind, or you hear the ball banging on the corrugated iron roof of that main stand. And you just, it's a cliche, but it does feel like lower league football turned up to 11. It feels like all the elements that you want of that have been deliberately supercharged, and it would feel really false and plasticky if that process had been done deliberately, but it hasn't. No. It's just happened organically there, which makes it 10 times better anyway.
And I think there's something as well to the teams that go down to non-league, who Football League was always their identity, and the relegation to non-league, and Grimsby had maybe 5 or 6 years out of the Football League. And then that process of coming together as a community, rising back up, which reinvigorates the fan base, because it's fun to win. It's nice. It's nice to, whatever level you are, you would, almost all fan bases, and whether they admit it or not, would rather be, at the top of a lower league than at the bottom of the struggling at the league above. And that process of bringing everyone together, I just wonder, I feel like it reinvigorates a club. And you've seen it, like I said, with Mansfield, with Lincoln, with Grimsby, these places that were, and I know it can go the other way. You can be a Scarborough as well, who just drop through, and you don't. But if you go into National League and then you come back, I think that's the good times, because you almost appreciate the fragility of it, and then I think that just kicks on, and I think that makes the stadium experience, like you said with Bromley, when you're back in the Football League, I think everyone just goes for it just a little bit more, and I think the atmosphere and is just better.
Yeah, and the other thing to say, and Mansfield's a very good example of this, along with Grimsby, is that without getting into too much sociopolitics, we're also talking about towns that have really suffered for deindustrialization over the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 decades, either gradually or very quickly. And so there is a need. I don't think it's a deliberate one, but it certainly happens that there is an innate need for something to come around. You used to know people because you work with them, and now that doesn't really happen in the same way. So you meet people at the football, and those football clubs going on hard times, either before, during, or after the deindustrialization, which is a process that will never be reversed. The football club has reversed that process. It's come back. And therefore, I think there's this sense of gratitude of, we stuck with this and we've finally been given some reward. So my God, we're going to make the most of it. I think that is in some way unique to those deindustrialized northern towns, of which, there are so many in the EFL, and they tend to be quite often, Mansfield's an exception, but they quite often tend to be these end of the line towns, near coastal towns or cities, that just get forgotten or feel like they've been forgotten by politics and by governments. And it does create this sense of this like earthy pride that can sound a little bit patronizing, I think, if you say it in the wrong way, but you just go to Grimsby and you'll see it. There is this, it's the football club in these towns are almost like a family, and that other people can't criticize them because you've got this like raw pride with it. But you're allowed to criticise it yourself, and you're allowed to get on the club's back if it's doing badly and it makes bad decisions and someone scores an own goal and you can give it what for. But when the club's doing well, there's nobody in the world that you're more proud of because they're your own. And yeah, it's magical, and we should, one of the points of the piece is we've got to protect that, because if we don't cherish it, and if everybody doesn't cherish it, writers and fans and people in power, then it will go and it will be a crying shame.
Really, well, the community work that a lot of these clubs do is fantastic, and that and they have a role, even like you said, even without the explicit community work that they do in running food banks, etc. Just in helping tackling social isolation and things like that. So it's super important. Thinking about the rest of your journey, because obviously we're talking to you, 2/3 of the way through. Where are you most looking forward to going that you haven't been yet? I know you've got the final game at the City Ground, and that'll be special for you. But are there any sort of things that are sort of circled on the calendar that you're like, yeah, I'm going to look forward to that?
Yeah, I am really looking forward to the. I think now I'm 2/3 of the way through. I'm looking forward to those grounds where I can probably see in my vision that I might not return to very often or for a long time. As we record, my next midweek, I've got Accrington Tuesday night and Barrow Wednesday night. Coincidentally, they're both at home Tuesday, Wednesday, which is really helpful. And that's one of those where I think I'm probably not going to go back to Barrow for quite a long time to watch football, or certainly to watch it for work. So make the most of it. Getting 2/3 of the way through, I'm not saying I can see the finishing line in sight, because that sounds incredibly overly confident, but I can see that somewhere like Brunton Park in Carlisle is somewhere where I am now. I need to cherish the 2 hours I spend in that ground, or the 3 hours I spend in that ground, because A, I'm not going to go back for a while for work. B, I might not go back at all for a while. But C, I'm never going to go back for the first time again. And that's the only, I have very, very, very few complaints about this project. It's going to have been the best season of my life. But the fact that there is a slight pathos in ticking them all off in one season, it's almost like a kind of all-you-can-eat buffet of Michelin star food, right? I'm never going to... If you do the 92 over 30 years, you get this new ground feeling kind of relatively equidistantly separated across those years. And it's a joyous experience going to a ground for the first time. I think I've only got about 14 of those left, maybe fewer. And that is, in a way, slightly sad, because I love new grounds. I love experiencing them. I love walking around and finding the magic doors and the weird views and the cubby holes, and that's the best bit. And at the end of this season, unless a team comes up from non-league who hasn't been up before and I haven't been to, then I'm not going to get to do that for a while, which is a very small violin that I'm playing, but that's the only downside.
It's literally it's a bed of your own making. I will say that.
It is, It's nobody's fault but mine.
It's you pitched this idea, so you it's sort of not quite thinking about the consequences of your own actions, isn't it? It's just, well, it's kind of what you wanted. No, I think that Carlisle would be amazingly interesting as well, because they're in such a fragile and fraught position at the moment. You're going to go with this joy and wonder and be like, oh, isn't this amazing? And you're going to turn up to people who are nervous wrecks, worrying that they're going to lose their football league status.
We talked about the fluidity earlier, and relatively early in the season, it seemed that Carlisle might struggle. I already thought that Morecambe might struggle, and so I did kind of shift those clubs further down the line, because you want to write about the story, right? I mean, we have other people here, so if something mad happens at a club I've already visited, then they can do it. But I, on a very selfish point, I'd like to be there for the story. And with Carlisle and Morecambe, if we're talking about football grounds, and there's a chance that these are no longer Football League grounds, and National League is incredibly hard to get back out of. So who knows when they will be again. And yeah, I have to manage my own personal joy with getting the mood right. But I think there's a way of doing that, which is, this is a wonderful place to watch football. And it is incredibly sad that through various reasons at both clubs, they may not be in the Football League anymore. And we don't know when they'll return. And life is about to get even harder, even though it's been pretty hard for a while in those two places. And they are both end of the line towns. They are both towns where it needs a league football club, and the league table doesn't lie. You don't get to just merit one because the town deserves one. You need to fight for that, and it needs to be fought for by the people in charge. And yeah, they are grounds that I'm looking forward to visiting, but the experience might actually be fairly unpleasant given the topics we're going to be discussing.
Well, I feel like we don't want to end on a downer. We definitely we definitely don't. So let's pivot to ground 92 then, because that should be, whether you end up in top 4, top 2, top 6, maybe even dream higher. That should be the culmination of Forest's greatest season for, like you said, since the mid-90s.
If I'd have known at the start of the season that Forest would do so well, I think I would have predicted that I'd feel pretty rotten about missing out on it all. The reality, and this is actually what I think, I'm not just emotionally self-preserving myself, but it's actually almost as good in living it through messages, phone calls, videos, club-produced content, but basically living it through your friends and people that are going there, and the kind of excitement. I go out in West Bridgford on most Friday nights to a pub, which is the William Gunn, which is, it's almost literally at the back of Forest main stand. It's probably a 15-second walk to the ground, and people are in the pub and they're talking about Forest, and they're not doing it with dark humour like normal. And they're not all doing it because they're season ticket holders. Some of them are doing it because they're kind of swept up in this Forest doing well. And I would say this about my club, but I think that's unique in Nottingham because everybody 55 plus is doing that with oh my God, I remember Brian Clough. And everybody under that age, or certainly under 45, is doing it with oh my God, I don't remember Brian Clough. And when those two meet, or even just talk amongst themselves, it feels incredibly exciting. Now, that was football at a different time, and it's not going to happen again. But it means that there is a kind of, best way to describe it is this sort of like heat island over that part of Nottingham at the moment, in which everybody just feels warm when they walk through it. And it is absolutely joyous. And it would be joyous whether I was going to the games or whether I'm just experiencing them and experiencing it all. It sort of helps that I went to one game at Manchester City and we lost 3-0, because I was able to sort of do my deal with the devil and say, right, I'm not going to any more games. So that jinx has been unearthed, and now it will be put to rest until the final day. But my goodness me, I want to get back there for that final day. I'd already decided at the start of the season that I was going to kind of, it's 8 miles from my house, so I was going to walk there and kind of do this sort of long navel gazing piece about, I visited 91 others, but home is where the heart is, yada, 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 etc. and so on, which will be a perfectly good piece, but it will be supercharged if it turns out Forest are going to qualify for Europe or something mad like that, because it's almost perfect. It's almost the perfect story. It would have been perfect for the narrative, I think, still, if Forest had been relegated on that final day, but I'm not sure my heart and brain and emotion after 91 trips could have coped. So I'm very glad. The one thing I said when the fixtures came out was, I just hope there's nothing on that final day in terms of, relegation. And now it's Forest versus Chelsea on the final day. And I'm thinking, well, that could be some sort of horrible shootout for the European competition, which is complete nonsense. And I still think is all just a dream. But yeah, it's going to be, I'm genuinely going to be pretty emotional walking to and from and during that game, because not just because it's the last one of the 92, but because it's kind of the place where all of the others weren't. For all that Grimsby is my favourite, and for all that lots of those grounds sit very close to my heart after this season. None of them are the City ground, right? Because you can't do that. No one can replace your mum. So yeah, it's going to be amazing.
It's lovely to hear that, and it's such a. I live in Nottinghamshire. We're about 10 miles out. We're a sort of mixed area where you get some stags, you get some county, you get some forest. But even here, like the excitement is building, and you see more people in the pubs watching the games because Forest are on the TV all the time, and it's just the chatter level is rising. And I hope it's comfortable for you guys so you can enjoy it. I really do. But if it becomes dramatic, at least you'll be there, and at least you'll see it. At least it will turn into a nice piece one way or the other.
The day I haunted Nottingham Forest's glorious finish.
The guy who had the worst record in Nottingham Forest's best ever season. It's just like, thanks for turning up, Dan. Well, thank you very much, though, for turning up on this podcast. Thanks for sharing your story of what you're doing, and particularly your insights and joy for Blundell Park. And we hope you get to number 92 and obviously 93, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the season.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about Blundell Park in particular and football grounds in general.
And right after we recorded that interview, Forest lost 5-0. So, sorry, Daniel. But, they won 7-0 the week after. So it's still going well for Forest. And what a lovely chat. What a lovely bloke. What an ambitious thing to do as well. I know work's paying for it. That helps. That obviously helps. But he doesn't have to do it. There's plenty of journalists in national football media who never get to the Brunton Parks and the Glebe Parks and the I don't know why why did I try and pull Crawley Stadium there? Broadmoor, Broadfield, something. Sorry, Crawley fans, do apologise. I've been, saw a great game there, but I can't remember the name. There's plenty of journos that don't get to these places. So, fair play to him. And hopefully he's got that fairy tale ending at the City Ground in match 92. Next week, we're going to be talking about one of the iconic European stadiums, and it's one that I know a lot of people love, and we're going to be talking the San Siro. Giuseppe Meazza Stadium, San Siro, whatever you want to call it, we know the place, home of AC and Inter Milan. So we're talking about that, and who knows, if Forest go well, maybe they could be playing at the San Siro next season. It's already recorded. We've got a brilliant guest. It's going to be fantastic. Please join us next week for another brilliant edition of the Ground Jewels. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. Obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors, but they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups get audit-ready and build a strong security foundation, quickly and painlessly. Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. The platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including Y Combinator and Techstar startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/simplify. That's VANTA.com/simplify for $1,000 off.